And it looks like we are live. So it might take a couple minutes for people to join us, but thank you everyone for joining us today. Super excited to have Lynn here with us. Lynn was actually going to be our keynote speaker at our senior care conference, which has been postponed, not canceled, just been postponed. We're waiting for more clarification as to what day we want to open or go, actually set the date and plan for that event. Super excited though to be able to have you there as our keynote, and very grateful for this time with you today. But I want to just kind of introduce you real quick, so those that may not know who you are. So Lynn is an ordained minister and certified master coach and lead mentor for the positive approach to care. She has a bachelor degree in teaching, master's in exercise physiology,
yep,
and master's of divinity. She has been working with people living with dementia and their families, as well as training both family and professional care partners for the past 10 years. So that's Lynn's background. She's with a great organization, the Positive Approach to Care with Teepa Snow, and just super grateful for the amount of information and knowledge that you have, and that you can share and bring to us today. So,
well, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I guess, that being said, I know this is kind of an interesting time for family caregivers. You might have family caregivers that have always, that have maybe utilized services such as home care, or maybe their loved one lived or was like going to a daycare center. And so they may not have been living with their loved one 24/7. Like in a state where you have like COVID going on today, and we have people that kind of stuck at home or with stay-at-home orders. Like, what are your thoughts on like recommendations for folks that might not be used to caring for their mom, dad, or spouse 24/7?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. It's a great question. So I've been thinking about that a lot, because when my mom actually lived with young onset frontotemporal dementia, and so I was actually with her 24/7. And so I went back to thinking about what was my experience, and knowing just how stressful it was, just to have to support somebody through their life, 24 hours a day can be really stressful. Even if it's going well, it just takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of thought. And so one of the biggest things that I did was, because I know it's really hard to think when you're stressed out.
Sure.
And so what I did was, when I had moments that I could actually sit down and think about what I could do with my mom, how could I help her stay engaged throughout the day? What could I do? I wrote lists for myself, and I posted those lists up where I could see them for, like, if something wasn't going well for the day, I could just go and look at that list and pick something off that list and try it, rather than having to think and be creative in the moment when I'm stressed out. So one thing is, if you have time to kind of get quiet, I know that's hard to do, but time to kind of really think about, how do I want the day to go? And if it doesn't go that way, what are some things that I could kind of pull out of my hat and try in the moment to help my person stay engaged? So when you think about being with somebody that needs support, depending on what kind of support they need, so in the beginning of my mom's dementia, she didn't need as much support from me. She kind of needed me to supervise or know where she was and kind of know what she was doing. And then later on, before she went and actually lived in a community, she needed a lot more support. She needed a lot more interaction with me. So based on what your loved one needs, what are their abilities? And so how much do you need to be involved to support their life? Thinking about then, what does a flow of the day look like? So if you pull yourself back and think, maybe before my loved one had dementia, what did the flow of my day look like? What did I do when I got up, and what was the next thing? How did I transition through the day? And then how did I transition, kind of when it was time to go to and rest? And then what did that flow of the day look like for your loved one? Are they used to getting up really early? Are they an early bird? Are they a night owl? Do they like to, stay up really late, but then they get up later in the morning? And so thinking about what were our regular routines and habits before we had before dementia came on board. And then thinking about how can we create a routine and flow of the day that maybe looks similar, but then it has some, differences that we need to add along the way to create more support. So, for instance, I'll just give like the first three things that I did with my mom. Every day I put on a meditative music to help us as we were starting to get dressed and then eat breakfast. And then we went to the kitchen, because when you think about where your loved one is during the day, is you can think about, is it the right environment, but is it also the preferred environment? So my mother, her places that she spent most of her day when she didn't have dementia was either in the kitchen or in the yard. And so it wouldn't serve me well to put her in the living room, because that's not where my mom would want to be. So we did the meditative music. We got, we started our day. We got cleaned up, got dressed, ate our breakfast. Then we sat in the kitchen and we colored mandalas, because she loved that. And then the next thing we did was we went outside for a walk. So those are just three things that I did to start the day with my mom. I did it every day. And she got into this routine. I found music that she really loved that kind of really settled her down and let her kind of move into her day in a calm way. And we just kept that going. But sometimes, we're all different. Every day we're different. So sometimes I would have to go to that list and say, this walk isn't working for her today. What else can I do for her? And so rather than having to pull that out of my brain, I just went to the list and just pick something else. Okay, let me try this instead.
Do you think people sometimes do they like try to fit their loved ones like kind of routine into their own routine instead of trying to understand, that maybe they need to adapt to their loved one's routine and then work around that schedule? Is that kind of a problem sometimes?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And that's oftentimes what we do is we think, what do we want to do? And then we try to get our loved one to do it. Or we think, I like to be really busy. But as somebody starts living with dementia longer and longer, that busyness, I don't necessarily need to be as busy as I used to be, or as busy or as I want to be throughout the day. So we want to step back and we want to look at the person who's living with dementia. And we want to look at a few things. We first want to remember who they are as a person. Are they an introvert or are they an extrovert? That's a big distinction. If I'm an extrovert, that means I want people around me. And it doesn't have to be like a particular person necessarily, but I need people because I'm an extrovert. So being part of like your online day program. So I see other people. Where can I see other people? And it's not just the person who I'm living with. That's really hard, especially with the COVID. With introverts don't need as many people, but we need the right people. So introverts are connected to maybe 2 or 3 people, and they don't really need a lot of people, but they do need that person that they feel very connected to. So who's your person? Are they an introvert or are they an extrovert? And are we paying attention to that?
Gotcha.
Another thing is, what's their circadian rhythm? Are they an early bird and they do want to do most of their stuff in the first half of the day, or are they a night owl and they prefer to do their stuff in the second half of the day? And then we want to think about, how much support does our loved one need? How much guidance do they need to do that? And then what was their regular routine? Did I always go to work? Did I always feel like I was important? Where did I work? What did it look like? Did I work with my hands? Was I a doctor and was I always charting and taking notes? Things like that.
Do you think the stages of which someone goes through when they are suffering from like Alzheimer's or some sort of cognitive other types of dementia, do you think like the different stages affect the type of routine that you can help get them into? Or like, is it does that routine that you might make or help create for them change over time?
It could change over time. We really have to pay attention to the person and see how they're responding to the routine that we've kind of created. It could look like the same type of routine, but there are modifications now. Where before my mom could color and cut out the mandalas, now we just kind of look at things that are colorful, that kind of thing. So how do we adapt what we're doing? Maybe the work that I do during the day doesn't quite look like work anymore, but I still am engaged somehow. So
Sure.
for instance, I used to work with a gentleman who loved dominoes. And at some point in his progression with dementia, the dominoes game became, I took the dominoes out of the box and I would point to a domino and he'd pick it up and I'd point to the box and he'd put it back in the box. And now that was our domino game.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it might not be about actually, playing that game how they used to, but it's more about just interacting with it and kind of going along with the motions of the flow of, what that thing that's familiar to them is,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
When you think about the person that's actually, our family caregivers, as we're talking about, creating this list and kind of helping to kind of create this routine for their loved one. What about themselves? Like, I mean, what do you recommend for people? Like, like how do they take care of themselves? When the majority of their focus is on, this person they're caring for, their loved one.
Yeah, and that's a great question because I lost like 15 pounds in like a month when I was. Wow. Wouldn't eat because of all the different challenges that was going on in the house with my mom. So I know it's really difficult. But there's some things that we can do if we can create routines that maybe if I'm the one living with dementia, I can do kind of on my own and you can take a little bit of a break, even if you're in the same room with me. Right. But creating time for prayer and meditation, depending on what you like to do, or if you don't like to do that, something where you can take time to be quiet and still, where you can kind of re-energize yourself if you need that space. Or like I'm a runner, so I get my energy when I go for a run. So I know I can't necessarily go out of the house and do that if I'm caring for a loved one. But is there something that I can do like gardening? And my loved one can sit there in the garden with me, but I can do something that feeds my soul as well. There was a study, and I can't cite the study right now, but I can try to look for the source if you need me to. But there was a study where they looked at caregivers and they took 5 deep breaths for 5 different times that were scheduled throughout the day. And they saw that their cortisol level, their stress level actually went down.
Wow.
So just doing this like deep breathing exercise and kind of doing it on a scheduled basis actually has shown that will decrease your level of cortisol. So where can you kind of interject what you need throughout the day so that maybe I'm busy and you can take a respite somewhere else? Oftentimes, and you might have talked about this in past webinars or in past times, is this shadowing that happens, is that my loved one is always with me and they don't want me out of their sight. And one of the reasons that happens is because when my brain starts to die with dementia, I don't necessarily know what comes next. But I know that you know what comes next. So if I'm with you, I feel safe and secure that I'm not kind of lost in my day or lost in my life. So even if you have somebody that kind of shadows you or needs to be with you all the time, can you do something that the person can still see you, but you're still in the same space, but it kind of gives you a little bit of time away from that person? Because that really is an important thing.
Do you think like when you get that break, and like say your loved one like maybe goes down for a nap or maybe they have a favorite TV show that they actually will maybe religiously watch that's like an hour long or something like that. Do you think like during that time is it important for them to use that time for themselves to take a break, like from just and just instead of trying to like clean up the house or use that time to finish all those little details? Do you think it's more important to just use that time for that person to rest, or what are your thoughts?
Right. So that's a great question. And I think it's more important for them to rest. And I know it's time, it's really, really easy to say, oh, okay, I have a half an hour. I know that I've got a half an hour. I need to go clean the dishes.
Right.
Actually bring your person with you to the kitchen and give them the things that are plastic, maybe if they're farther along in their dementia, where they can dry those plastic things with you. And that becomes something that you do together. One of the things that I like to do is I like to interview people living with dementia. And over and over and over again, I hear them say, don't take all of my choices away from me. Let me help. I want to take care of my loved one. So having them help you with a chore, I know that it's not going to look pretty all the time. I know that it's not always going to get done the right way all the time. But if you can create that opportunity for your loved one to participate and help, I
Right.
hear that over and over again, that people living with dementia really want to feel needed.
Sure. It's like I know sometimes, like, the way I might load the dishwasher and the way my wife might load it is completely different. And
Yeah,
like my OCD tendencies, like all of a sudden will come out when if she's preloaded it, I'm like in there rearranging everything. So I can
yeah,
imagine like part of that's like, even if they're helping, you just gotta like let go of those things, let those things maybe not be perfect the way you want them done, but at least they
right.
were able to engage and maybe help, or at least, kind of buy time.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, a great comment, because, dementia makes everything look different. And so we want to, if we hold on to what it's supposed to look like, or what we wanted it to look like, or, that kind of thing, it's going to be a much bigger struggle than if we're able to get to the place where, okay, this isn't really what I wanted to have happen here, but the dishwasher is still loaded and we were able to do this together. And that's more important than having the plates on the top or on the bottom, wherever they're supposed to
Right.
be. Yeah.
Is it now? I kind of wanted to, before we like move on too far, I kind of wanted to circle back to your list that you talked about in the beginning, just
Yeah.
to better understand, like, too, when people are putting something like that together for their loved ones, or just kind of, is that something that, like, are they taking into consideration, like, the stuff that's specific to that person, like things that they used to love to do, or they know they enjoyed, or how do you create that? Is it, do I listen to, like, some ideas that maybe you've like shared, or do I go follow somebody else that has these different ideas? Like, where do I come up with these ideas for my loved one?
Yeah. So I would go start with, what do I know about my loved one? What did they used to like to do? What do they gravitate towards now? And almost put it in categories. So when I say creating a flow of the day, it's like creating a pattern of energy, right? So if you think about your day, maybe before dementia happened, what did it look like? Some parts of the day I have a lot more energy, then I might need a little bit of a rest, or like me, I just go full blast until I crash, right after dinner, and that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to do anything else after like 7 o'clock. But, so what does the flow of the day energetically look like as well? So in your list, think about, when I need rest, or my person needs rest, or we need just a break. What are some of the things that they might like if they've gone to church all of their life? Maybe put on some church music, maybe put the hymns on, or somebody who's reading scripture, or something like that they would gravitate towards. Maybe it's sitting out in the garden. So putting lists together of, okay, this is rest, this is
Right.
work, this is fun, and then
Right.
this is when we take care of ourselves,
Uh,
exercise.
I was almost thinking, like, when you said it's like maybe like 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Like that might be like, okay, we go for a walk through the
Mhm.
neighborhood, or we do something, and then from like 10 to noon, maybe it's like, okay, I put on that favorite show at 10 to 11, and then from 11 to noon we maybe like we eat lunch on the patio or something like that. Like,
Uh-huh.
kind of picking those windows of time, and then maybe categorizing in each window, like the options that I might
Yeah.
have for that day. Okay,
Yeah. Yes, something
gotcha.
like that. And then I know that um, hygiene can get really, really tricky. So even before lunch, we both go to the sink and we wash our hands, and we do it together. And so that becomes a routine, as well as maybe even putting a little bit of hygiene in there. So then it's not just one time where we have to get clean all at once, but we're cleaning our hands, and that becomes part of the routine, especially with this COVID. And then when we go out or we go back to the day program, then our person is used to washing their hands and keeping clean and things like that. So adding some things that you want to get accomplished, also put those into your routine as well. Because engagement isn't just about keeping somebody busy. It's about a meaningful life. How do we create a meaningful life?
Right. What do you think someone that's like suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's or a cognitive change? What do you think about like what is it to them? Do you think is actually helps give them purpose and meaning? Like, is there something that like you've seen over the years that maybe has a bigger impact? To give that person a sense of purpose.
Well, I think it really depends on the person again, like going back to the person. What do we know about this person? Does this person need to feel like they're important? So we go and ask for advice, or, do I need the papers in front of me because I was an accountant, and we go and we talk about the bills, or I have a blank checkbook that I can write checks out with that never go anywhere. Even if I put them in an envelope and we put it in the mailbox, it's not going anywhere, but I'm still taking care of the bills for you. I had a gentleman who actually had frontal temporal dementia that I supported in one of my communities, and he was a golfer. And so frontal temporal dementia, oftentimes I have difficulty with either receptive language, what I understand, or expressive language, what I could say. And he had difficulty with kind of both, but primarily the expressive language. So I put a golf club in his hand and brought him out to a putting green one time, and full on sentence, he gave me a complete golfing lesson. And this gentleman couldn't speak, or we didn't think could speak, but that kind of opened up a window for him. It was a familiar thing. It gave him a sense of importance. Just holding that golf club, I was amazed and thrilled. And he showed me how to putt on the putting green, and he could talk, and he was sitting there, and it was like the coolest thing ever. So really tapping into what we know about that person again. And even though I can't do it exactly the same, just like the domino game, what can I do that it still is familiar to me, and I still feel like I'm needed by you?
It's interesting that you say that, because we had a time. There was a time where one of our residents, she got to a point where she couldn't communicate at all. She couldn't, there was not verbally, she could not express to us what she really was in need of. And so it was interesting because like it really became a guessing game, because we knew her prior to like that happening, or over time, she had that decline. And it was interesting because like there was always a couple songs that would come on, and it would like she would jolt right back to like how we knew her to be like 3 years prior.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. She could sing the entire song. She could dance. She had all the the rhythm and the steps. Like it was just like she came back to life. It was incredible. So I'm guessing that's probably a similar. In his world, it was golf. For her, it was those particular songs.
And that's a really good point, that things that we retain longer into the dementia are music, poetry, and prayer. So those are some things that you can think about when you're creating your list. Those are things that we are somehow able to hang on to longer, even when I can't follow a conversation. Sometimes I can read words longer into the dementia than I can hear. And then it's music, poetry, and prayer. So anything that I've like rotely remembered, and it's kind of a ritual type of thing for me, it could be part of my religion. It could be something else, the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, those kind of things. I can really resonate with that longer into the dementia.
That's awesome. That's really great information. When you think about like right now, like connecting, like caregivers, because I know we talked about them taking breaks and finding those respites and trying to like get that. When it comes to them connecting with their peers or with others, how can they do that during these times, or what do you recommend, or what are you guys seeing in your world right now?
So this Zoom and this platform here is really important. I know a lot of families are getting together and they're doing family game nights, or they're doing, or social groups are doing coffee, but they're doing it via Zoom now. And so maybe that's something that the caregivers can do if they had a support group. Are they doing it virtually? I know you're offering a lot of virtual things. But can you create these kind of social groups? Because social isolation and loneliness is huge as people age, as people get dementia, and then now with this COVID thing. So
yeah, that was like that social isolation thing. Like I did a study on that because when we prior to us opening the daycare, and like in the social isolation, or at least in kind of like our world, the daycare world, and also kind of like the Medicaid world, or like with Humana having these different programs, like with the Bold Goal, and like a lot of this stuff had social isolation and loneliness as part of like, how do we solve this problem?
Oh,
and
yeah.
and so then I went and did a deep study on it, like with all these peer-reviewed like scientific articles on it, and I was blown away by like how like just like what I found. Like I was like, I mean, like it was amazing to me. Like that's when I started realizing that our daycare is really medicine for people.
Oh, for sure.
I was like this, this is an opportunity to provide people kind of almost like with some natural healing, and some
Oh, yeah.
some natural medicine where, and we could see it when people would come in and start with a program, and like their lives over a few months would just like change. I mean, they would just like completely brighten up, and that's what killed me when we had to close down temporarily.
Oh, I know.
I was like, man, I can't even imagine like, to go from that high stimulation, high interaction, high engagement to like a home environment, which no fault of their families, but just the fact that now, I'm at home, by myself, maybe during the day because my loved one's working, or even if I'm at home during the day, maybe my loved one's working from home, so they're not really engaged with me all day long. And it's like, how do we solve that, problem? And even, maybe in some cases where you have mild dementia, the families maybe can't be fully present, and they're trying to like manage their work life, and then also trying to help mom and keep her, engaged.
Oh, yeah. And that's so cool that you did an in-depth study on that. And I know that you're offering a lot of things, but I would say take advantage of everything. But set up some social groups if you can via Zoom, or maybe you can help with that. I know that you're always thinking outside of the box, and
Trying.
you're always thinking of new things and new ways to help people. It's very impressive.
Well, so you guys. I mean, I love what you and just the whole positive approach to care and everything that you and Teepa Snow and the rest of your guys' team has done. It's amazing. What is when you think about right now, like, or just maybe even on a just kind of a small scale, just helping understand like the different types of, I know you briefly mentioned frontal lobe dementia. Is there a way that we could, I know we probably don't have enough time to go into a lot of depth of this, but maybe just even give like a general overview of kind of like different types of dementia that people might be dealing with.
Yeah, so there are over 110 types of dementia.
Gotcha.
And so just like everything, depending on the person, they're going to respond differently to whatever kind of dementia they have. But there are some kind of categories of it. And it is important if you can get a diagnosis to know, because that shows that in particular parts of the brain, that's where your dementia is starting. So first of all, there's young onset, which is under 65 years of age. That's what my mom had. And there's then older onset, which is 65 and above. So depending on when you're diagnosed, that's a difference in itself. So there's Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So it's kind of like dementia is kind of is the umbrella term. It covers everything, and Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So Alzheimer's starts in the hippocampus, and primarily you'll start to see the things that the hippocampus does is that the memory, time awareness, being able to kind of navigate my environment and not getting lost, things like that. That's what you might see first with Alzheimer's. With frontotemporal dementia, that then says you have dementia primarily starting in the frontal lobe of your brain and the temporal lobes of your brain. The frontal lobe of your brain is the executive processing part of your brain. It tells you, if I do this, this will happen. It lets me see your perspective. It lets me have self-awareness. It gives me the steps in a sequence. So I know how to do the entire sequence of maybe brushing my teeth. If I have frontal dementia or frontal temporal dementia, I might get stuck in some part of that brushing my teeth because that executive processing part doesn't.
So would that be like I'm like brush my teeth, but then all of a sudden I stop and I'm like, why am I doing this, or what am I doing, type of thing?
Or yeah, stop. I think I'm done, or I don't know how to stop. So I keep brushing my teeth, or I put my toothbrush under the water. I put it down on the sink. I walk out. You ask me, have you brushed your teeth? I say, yeah, of course I brushed my teeth. And then we get in an argument because now you might say you haven't. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's where I always feel bad for like spouses, you know,
Yeah.
like just because I feel like, you know, in their minds they treat it like less like when I feel like when it's your mom or dad, you almost kind of like, okay, they're, you know, like there's maybe a mindset of like, okay, they're, you know, they're getting older, like they need a little help. But when it's your spouse, it's like, you know, what's wrong with my husband? Like, you know, it's it's almost like they don't excuse that fact that they might be having the dementia as much, you know, and it's always feel bad for our spouses, but.
Yeah, that's got to be a really tough place to be when it's your spouse.
Yeah.
But knowing where I'm struggling is really important to know that. And I'll tell you that I brushed my teeth because I think I did brush my teeth. And you see the evidence that I didn't, and now we get into kind of an argument. But here's a big tip. Never get into an argument with somebody living with dementia because you will never win. And because my reality is my reality. And I'm always doing the best I can and my brain is actually dying. So we oftentimes try to drag somebody back into our reality who has dementia. And it's really us that has to step into their reality, because if they could, they would, but they can't anymore. But then the temporal lobe is where we have language, where I misunderstand what you're saying, or I completely hear different words, or I miss the words, or I can't tell you what I want to tell you anymore. So that's the kind of the temporal lobe. And then we have Lewy body dementia, which kind of looks like Parkinson's disease and oftentimes is misdiagnosed as have tremors and sleep disturbances and hallucinations and things like that. Then we have vascular dementia, which is from the cardiovascular disease. So that's when there is a restriction of blood and oxygen supply in the brain. So that really can be anywhere in the brain because it just depends on where I had that stroke or I had that, episode in my brain. And now that part of my brain is struggling some more. So there are 100. Go ahead.
No, is there any one of those that you mentioned that like is more popular, like like this one's like 50% of the diagnoses and this one's like 30%, or is it just like is it all over the board?
So I don't know the latest data, but I do know that Alzheimer's is the one that is most diagnosed. Okay. But frontal temporal dementias and Lewy body dementias are becoming more and more diagnosed. The more that we know and understand, the more accurate our diagnoses are. But it just really kind of depends on who your doctor is, whether they can tell you whether you have one or the other.
And that's what I'm going to ask you too, because I feel like you guys are so well versed and so understand dementia and the complexities of it so well that sometimes I often wonder, like, does a primary care physician, know like half the stuff that you even know? I mean, like when it comes to, diagnosing somebody with dementia, or is there someone that you really should be trying to reach out to or speak with to get a more accurate diagnosis?
Yeah, that's another great question. As neurologists or geropsychiatrists or geriatricians, so a geriatrician is a doctor of when someone's getting older. So you go to a pediatrician when you're younger, you go to orthopedic when you have something wrong with your body, with your bones or ligaments and muscles, you go to a cardiologist if you have something with your heart. When we're older, we really should be looking for geriatricians, who that is my field of study, is as the body is aging, what actually happens. Just like, my one of my masters is in exercise physiology. I study what happens to the body when it's in exercise. So it's the same thing. What happens to the body and the brain when someone gets older? So yes, looking for a geriatrician, they're kind of like the quarterback of your team. And so they would then hold all of the information and kind of guide you with that. I know there's some great geriatricians up this way in Orlando. I'm sure there are some great ones down there and down your way as well.
Sure, absolutely. So it's important for people definitely to reach out to folks in that. When you think about adjusting, and to kind of slowly wrap this up a little bit too, because I know I could talk to you all day. I know that, but I also know we have limited time schedules too. But when you think about just kind of adjusting back to a life post COVID, trying to get back into maybe you just got comfortable with your new routine of with a stay-at-home order. Now
right.
all of a sudden you're like, okay, how do I go back to work or reintroduce my loved one into this environment? Maybe what are any suggestions that you might have for folks going through that?
Yeah, that is a great question. So what I would maybe think of doing is if their loved one's going to go back to the day program, like I said, also incorporating washing your hands throughout the day as much as you can, because that's what you're going to want, I'm sure, when someone's in a day program, is that they're used to washing their hands, keeping themselves clean. And then maybe my loved one goes to the day program, I don't know, from 11 to 3 or 11 to 2. So during my time, if that works into my schedule as well, that should be maybe the time where we're most active at home. So my energetic, my circadian rhythm, I'm still used to kind of being really engaged in this time, so that it's not a struggle for me, because now I'm used to resting at that time. And now you're sending me back to this day program, and it's kind of thrown me off, and then maybe I don't really know how to engage anymore, and then that's going to be a struggle for your staff, and that kind of thing.
Sure, 100%. Because I think sometimes what I've noticed too is, even with at our assisted living facility, routine is so important for our residents that shifting from some of our residents would come to our day program, and then also just our residents having their normal routine of what life was pre-COVID. And as soon as the stay-at-home orders went in place and families couldn't see their loved ones anymore, it became a totally different environment for them. And I really felt like that routine affected them more than anything, just the change of it,
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I was like, man, it was that's what I hated, is that and I even think for us as folks that may not have any cognitive things going on right now,
right.
It's even our own routines, when they got changed, it screwed us up. At least it did me. I know for a week or two, I'm like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Yes, an adjustment, and we know why we're doing it, and we maybe have more tools to kind of sell ourselves and rationalize thinking about this, but it's hard. So I would try to, as I transition to the day program, is if my person needs to have energy in this time of the day, then if it works in my schedule, let's see if I can keep that going the same way.
I was just thinking too, if someone had previously, say they used to work and they would get up at 7 a.m. and bring their loved one in early, but then after the COVID incident, maybe they started sleeping in and they pushed it back an hour or two. That could be a great example, maybe when someone should, okay, let's go back to even if I'm not ready for work yet, but prior to me going back to work, not the day before, but maybe a week prior, I start introducing that new routine that we were familiar with.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It takes a lot of work being supporting somebody living with dementia, and my hat goes off to every single person. And the more the more support you can use, the more you're able to support yourself, the easier it'll be, and the more you can love your person living with dementia. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, just real quick as we wrap up, what are some resources that you have to offer? Where could they find them? What are some things that, whether it's yourself, personally, I know you wrote a book, or I think maybe even two of them, two different books, but,
Yeah.
and then I know there's some tools and some resources that the Positive Approach to Care organization has. If you want to maybe just share those with us real quick too.
Yes. So, so the two books I wrote, one is Alzheimer's, A Beautiful Spirit Celebrated, and it's really, because I'm a pastor and Reiki master, it's about how to connect with your person on a spiritual basis, but also rethinking how we think about dementia. The other one is A Heart Full of Gems, and it's a children's book that kind of goes through the stages of dementia so a child could understand what's going on with their loved one as well. But if you want to go to tipasnow.com, there's a store there. There are free videos. I know Tipa's doing a lot of YouTube, Facebook things right now with the COVID, with everybody being grounded. We have a journal that we put out. So tipasnow.com, there are tons and tons of resources on there. Yeah.
Because I know like you guys have created a lot of like content together too, like even in the past, I think where just even like almost doing like, I guess, what do you call it? Role playing,
Yes.
with, as the caregiver, and then that person maybe with dementia. And it's cool to see that and actually see that in person. I think it's actually so helpful to families, because I think being able to put it in perspective, so they can visualize maybe how to interact with their loved ones, so.
Yes. Yeah. And if you see something on the store that you're not quite know which one I should go with or that kind of thing, you can always call, and there are people there that can kind of guide you through what the best resource might be for you right now.
Fantastic. And then just one more time, the names of the two books that you had authored.
Alzheimer's, A Beautiful Spirit Celebrated.
Yep.
And then A Heart Full of Gems. So that children's book is based on the GEMS ability model that Teepa Snow created. So I took the GEMS model and wrote a children's story based on that, so that each gem we talk about as a child would understand it. And so the premise is we all have a heart full of gems. So if you were an emerald, and so I would find the emerald in my heart and connect it with you. And it gives you all kinds of, in the resource guide in the back, all kinds of ideas of how to interact with that person based on the gem level that they have.
I love it. I think that would be great, especially right now too, if you had, these, grandchildren maybe at home, with, their grandparents who maybe are suffering from this because of everyone maybe, being at home at the same time, kids out of school.
Right.
And they're so that actually might be a great book, especially during this time too. For those that are living with their loved ones that might have that. But thank you so much, Lynn, for your time. I really appreciate it. I so look forward to actually being able to visit with you in person and be able to continue forward with our conference and having you as the keynote speaker. But thank you so much for your time today.
Me too. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. You guys have a great day. Thanks for everyone for watching today. Thank you all. We will see you soon. If you have any questions, please give us a call here or shoot us an email or go to our website, seniorsource.com. Thank you all and have a great day. All right.